What's up, beautiful people? It's your girl janiaaaliyah, and welcome back to my channel. Y'all, this feels so weird right now because I feel like I haven't done like a new hairstyle in a minute, but I feel a breeze outside, which means fall has started, which means your girl is back trying new stuff. As you can see by the thumbnail and the title, today I am installing a 2x6 closure and sew-in. And for the hair, you can find it linked in the description box down below. I'm using 3 bundles of, I believe, the 24-inch She Slays First straight hair. And my 2x6 closure is from She Slays First as well, and it's an HD closure. So if you interested in seeing how I got this look, then keep watching. So the first thing you're going to need to do for this style is to determine your part, and I was in a middle part type of mood today, so I am parting my hair down the middle from my forehead to the nape of my neck. And so basically from there I decided to section off, basically just put 2 pigtails in my head to keep my middle part intact throughout the braid down process, because as y'all know, those parts can get to slipping and sliding when it is time. But as long as wherever your part is going to be, as long as it's flat enough for your closure to go on there, you are okay. And so for the first time, I decided to try something new when it comes to my breakdown, because as many of you may or may not know, I do have a bob in my head. I have a blunt cut, and when you have a blunt cut, it kind of makes just braiding harder. So I decided to take a piece of thread instead of doing like braiding hair or like canicle on hair or whatever. I just took a piece of thread and I added that to my braid. One, because it's very fine, so that way it won't be adding too much more volume to my braid. Basically it won't make my braid thicker, and also it kind of helped keep those ends together because my hair is in a blunt cut. And so from there, I'm just going through with my braid down, and as you guys can see, I'm connecting the ends of the braids about halfway through the next cornrow. And when it comes to your braid down can either make or break your sew-in. So if you want a super duper flat sew-in, you need to do many more than mine. You need to do many small braids. If you just trying to get through it, or you want to kind of have a little less tension on your hair, then you can kind of go the route I went, which was with medium braids, because I do have fine edges, so I didn't want to have too much tension, hence why I did a bigger kind of anchor braid on my edges. Now, and if you just feeling lazy and you want to go with them large braids, you do you, boo, but be ready for that sew-in to be just a little lumpy. Okay. But overall, you don't have to be too picky, especially when it comes to the braids in this install in particular, because as you guys will see later on, we are going to do the net, which is going to alleviate some of that tension that will usually be placed on braids, but in this case it won't be, because we're going to have a net. Now, especially when you are using a net for your sew-in, it's very important to make sure you just oil your scalp beforehand, because you won't have the opportunity to really go back and oil your scalp after the fact, due to the fact that the net is going to be covering your scalp, child. So if you like to scratch your scalp and feel your scalp like me, girl, just be ready to not be able to. So the next step that I'm going to be going through with is doing the wig cap. Now this is one of the most important steps of this process, because as you know, we need the closure to look like scalp. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting on my wig cap, and then I'm going to go through with a white barber pencil as well as my 2x6 closure, and I'm just going to mark out, 1, where I want that closure to lay, and then 2, where it's going to be laying across my wig cap. And y'all will see this coming later, but basically I'm just outlining the closure, because I'm gonna go in and have to sew down this wig cap. And so in order for me to know where I need to sew, that's why we have the outline here. And the outline is not perfect, but it's good enough, okay? And then we're also going to go in and we have to glue down the front of the closure. So as you know, this is a 2x6 closure, so we're doing about 2 inches of glue. So we're just gluing basically from where you want the closure to lay to basically the kind of beginning of your edges, because as y'all can see, as I'm sewing around the perimeter of where the closure will be laying, the last piece of thread will end basically where my first braid is, right there on my perimeter, basically on my edges. And so from there, the only security that we have to lay this wig cap down is going to be that glue that we just placed. Now when it comes to the glue, do wait till it dries before you go through and cut it. Y'all will see in a couple of seconds me cutting mine off, but definitely wait till it dries. And as far as like what you use to glue it down with, that's completely up to you. Y'all know when I do my wig installs, I usually don't even wear wig caps, so I just went ahead and used my lace glue because we don't want the closure lifting and we don't want the wig cap lifting. So whatever works for you, just do that, but make sure you glue this piece down, okay, because this is important. Now once the wig cap is glued down, then we're going to go through and we're going to start cutting it off. And if you have installed a wig before with a wig cap, then you know if you cut that wig cap in the wrong spot or just a little too much at the wrong time, it's going to start pulling and tugging at that glue that you just laid down. So as y'all can see, I'm doing multiple tiny cuts all around the wig cap just to release some of the tension that would have been pulling on where the glue is laid down. And from there, I'm just going through and cutting off basically everything that was not sewn down. It doesn't have to be super perfect, and don't try to get too close to where you sewed down, because you don't want for, you know, the thread or to cut the wrong spot and now your whole wig cap is just like coming off. Yeah, the wig cap, that fabric is super weak. So yeah, don't try to get perfect when cutting the wig cap pieces off, because we about to sew a closure right on top of it and then tracks right on top of that. So with that being said, just make sure you cut most of it off. Then from there, I'm going through and kind of just perfecting where I do have the wig cap laying, because I think it is better to kind of glue it down a little too much than not enough, because once you cut that wig cap off, you can't get it back. But I kind of noticed that I was like, that's a little too far up on my forehead, and I feel like the best way to have a natural looking sew-in is to kind of have your closure lay where your natural hairline will lay. But now we're moving into the next step, and to me this is the hardest step of this entire process, but it's basically just sewing this net to your head. And so for a life hack for any of y'all who have kind of had experiences with the net, the easiest way to kind of sew this to your head and just to sew this to your head is to get some little pin curl clips, which is what I have in my hair right now, and kind of lay the net where you want it to be sewn down and just clip it down in place. I latch mine to my braids, and basically they're just going to be clipped until you make it around your head. And once you make it to each clip, you'll remove the clip and just sew in the clip's place, and just kind of repeat that pattern as you're sewing around your head. And that just makes this net laying process so much easier, y'all. And me and the net, we have a love-hate relationship, but overall I prefer having a net than a super tight sew-in, so it is what it is. And then be sure that when you're sewing the net, we're also going to sew right back over where we just sewed the wig cap down, where the closure will be laying. And so we're going to make sure that we once again trace that outline, because the net is going to be cut off where the wig cap is laying. So we're sewing the net, focusing mainly on the perimeter, but then we're going to go follow that U shape that we just cut out for the wig cap, so that way we still can kind of have a scalp type, you know, illusion going on under our closure. And when cutting this off, I will also follow kind of the same thing that I followed when cutting off the wig cap, is, you know, get as close as you can, but not too close, because you don't want to cut too much and then now like the thread is not holding on to anything, and basically you just wasted your time. So as y'all can see, I'm kind of just cutting far and then I'm working my way in. And when I'm going through to cut the wig cap, I start by going through and cutting the middle, so that way I can actually see what I'm cutting. And once I get through there, then now I'm just cutting piece by piece, but not trying to get too close to the thread, but at the same time just enough where it's not in the way. And yeah. So once you lay down your net and everything is where it's supposed to be, I'm now going in and I'm just kind of dabbing my wig cap with a little bit of cream foundation. I use cream because liquid is just a little too oily and it may get in the way of the adhesive when you try to lay it down. And from there we can go through and we can add on the closure. Now my closure, I bleached the knots and everything off camera, so y'all can kind of see that here. And it is an HD lace closure from She Slays First Hair, which y'all can find linked down in the description box below. But I'm going through and doing basically the exact same thing that I did to lay this net. I'm doing it with the closure. So I'm using my pin curl clips and I'm just putting that closure in place. And right now it kind of looks like, oh, is too far up on my head, but be mindful, you want the closure to be farther up on your head when you're going through to sew it down, because as y'all will notice, once you sew it down, the thread is kind of gonna pull it a little farther back, which is why I started with my closure pulled up so far, because once you sew that thread down, it's gonna pull it back. And so you don't want to start with your closure exactly in place where you want it to be, because once you finish sewing, it's gonna be like, dang, my closure is kind of far back. So start with your closure farther up and then pull it back. You gonna thank me later, okay? So now we're just going through and we're sewing the closure down. And the way I like to sew my closure down, I don't know the name of this stitch, but I'm just gonna guess and I'm gonna call it a lock stitch. Basically the way I stitch this one is I like to stitch from under. So I go through the braid, through underneath the closure, and then I pull the needle through the loop of thread, if that makes sense. Hopefully y'all can kind of understand what I'm saying. But through the braid, underneath the closure, and then the thread kind of has a little loop in it already, and I just pull the needle through that, and that just kind of makes like a, I don't even know what it look like, but almost through the U. Okay, I'm trying to make it make sense for y'all, but that's the best I can do. So yeah, and so once we get to the end of sewing the closure down to the braids, it'll kind of be the same as the wig cap, where it's like, okay, where do we go from here, because you can't sew this down, and this is where it's going to come in with the glue. And once again, y'all can kind of still see that my wig cap is a little far up, and I'm going to continue to kind of cut it off as we go on. But basically the closure is now lining up perfectly with my hairline, which is gonna make this install look very, very natural as time goes on. Now here you can use your lace glue of choice. Today I think I use the Wig Dealer waterproof lace glue, and I really do like Wig Dealer's glue products. I also use their touch up bonding gel, but yeah, I use the waterproof lace glue here, and so I'm just using that to lay this lace. And this was very, very easy. This was a very easy piece of lace to lay due to how small it is. It's not really hard, like it's not really easy to mess this one up. So I'm just placing it down on that glue, and I'm kind of combing it down. I'm combing it down just to make sure it's really like tacked down the way I want it. And then from there, I wait till the glue is fully dried. Emphasis on fully dried, until I put that elastic on. That is how you, me, and everybody else and a mama end up getting the little white glue spots, or your wig lifts when you put the elastic band on. That's because you did not let that glue dry before you put the elastic band on. So please let the glue dry before you put on the elastic, because the elastic will not work if the glue is not all the way dry. Okay, please hear me. Okay, now as for the rest of this, after this, if you've done a sewing before, it gets very, very easy. But for the very first track, what I did was I just this is going to be like double wefted. So basically I have one bundle and I just kept it folded in half, and from there I'm literally just sewing from the first braid, so from the end of the closure on one side all the way around my head to the end of the closure on another side. So basically this first bundle is literally just going to go around my perimeter, and the size of the bundle basically was just enough to do that. I probably had maybe like 2 or 3 inches left over from this bundle from there, and I just ended up cutting that off because that was all I kind of needed to sew around here. But I'm just doing that, and when you do this, you want to make sure it doesn't have to be super duper tight, but you want to make sure it is super duper flat, because if it's not, then it's kind of going to contribute to your overall look. And the reason I sew this bundle like this specifically is because although the closure is in the front and it's gonna kind of lay down your head, is really not enough hair to just kind of make the style look natural on its own. And if you just sewed the tracks down regularly, they're gonna fall straight down, but you're not gonna have much hair other than the hair from the closure actually falling in your face. And so that's the reason that I'm sewing this track down on the perimeter, so that way you still kind of have a little more coverage that goes underneath the closure on your face. Because if y'all can notice, you have at least an inch of closure that is not attached to a braid, just an inch of closure that's attached to your hairline, attached to your forehead. And so from there, if it ain't no braid, how you gonna sew extra hair on there that's gonna fall underneath the closure? So that is the reason why I'm sewing the track the way that I'm sewing the track, because as y'all can see, even before I cut the rest of the track off, that track literally just falls right to my face. And so once I sew the rest of them on, y'all can see that the rest of the hair just goes straight down where the braids are, whereas that one falls right on my face. Okay. And also, like I said, I did double weft that one bundle, but after this, because I had 3 bundles of hair and it's longer hair, I literally single wefted the rest of this install. So I double wefted the one bundle that's going to be around my perimeter, but for the rest of the install, I'm just doing a single track. I'm doing the fold over method, folding it over, and I'm just sewing up on my head. And a lot of people always ask me how I do the back of my head, and for me, a lot of it is just feeling with my hands. So I'm feeling the needle with my hands, I'm holding the track with my hands, I'm making sure, you know, sewing is tight with my hands. And so that's the best I can say to you. I usually don't look when I am doing the back of my head, just because I can feel it, so I know how it's supposed to feel. And as far as it goes with laying the tracks, I like to lay my tracks a finger width apart. So what that means is I hold my index finger horizontal, and so I'm going to have one track under it and one track directly on top of my index finger. And so that is how I make sure that my tracks are as far apart or as close together as I want them to be, without having to see. I just use my hands and use my fingers to kind of feel my way through the sew-in. Now here, y'all, we are basically almost done, but as y'all can see, the closure has not been secured. The closure still needs to be cut and styled. And so I'm just straightening my hair right here, just kind of get some of the lumps out the way just from the hair being in the pack. And y'all, I was low-key kind of getting hyped, even though it was like super late at night. But here we're just cutting the closure, and I like to use just a regular little blade to cut the closure, just so it's not in a straight line. But as y'all can see here, the closure is not blended. So what I did to blend this closure is I just sprayed a little basically just holding spray. Something like got to be just spray a little spray to hold the closure. And then I went in with the Ruby Kiss cream foundation in the shade 16, because that's my shade, and that literally blended that closure right in. And you already know, had the elastic band on just throughout styling, and that is how that closure is gonna blend in, y'all. And y'all already know I wanted to do just some little curls, a little bit of waves, just to bring this look all together. So that's exactly what I'm doing here, just curling my hair. And stay tuned for the final look. Okay, y'all, so here is the final look. Y'all, get into the closure, and I feel like I'm most impressed with the blend. Like my chair is squeaking, but I'm most impressed with the blend because, girl, and it looks just as good in person, y'all. I honestly don't even know what to say. But anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Hopefully this video inspired y'all to try out 2x6 closures, because as y'all know, I'm trying to do as much as I can to kind of mitigate having to press and flatten my leave out and all that good stuff every day. So that's why I wanted to try out a closure, so we can, you know, try to be a little more protective. So if you're interested in shopping this hair, all of the hair that I'm wearing is from She Slays First Hair. It will be linked down in the description box below. And let me know what you think about this style. You already know, click, smack that subscribe button down below, and I will see y'all on my next video.
Daddy drew you like that beautiful black child. Come and shed your black cloud for your vibe and your smile. I don't mind a little rain. I'm your dog, ears perk up at the sound of your name.